Let me tell you something I've never said out loud. Not in any boardroom, not in any interview, not to the person who asked me once at a dinner I barely remember attending, "Are you okay?" And I smiled. I nodded. I said something clever about pressure being the price of ambition, and I watched their eyes move on. And I let them, because that's what I was trained to do. Not in school, not by a teacher, by something older than curriculum, something quieter, something I absorbed the way children absorb everything, not through instruction, but through observation, through the slow accumulation of moments that taught me what was safe to show and what had to stay hidden. I was taught, not with words but with silence, that love arrived on the other side of performance, that it came after the grade, after the win, after the thing got done. And I was a fast learner. God, I was fast. I learned to be impressive. Before I learned to be honest, I learned to achieve before I learned to rest. I learned to build before I ever learned what a foundation actually was. So I built the way a man builds when he's terrified of the alternative. Not because he loves what he's building, not always, but because stopping, even for a moment, means something catches up, and I didn't know what that something was. I just knew it was behind me, and it was fast, and the only way to stay ahead of it was to keep moving, keep producing, keep optimizing, keep stacking accomplishments like bricks in a wall that I told myself was a monument, but was actually, I see it now, a barricade. I built systems, I built habits, I built schedules so full there was no empty space for anything uncomfortable to crawl into. I woke before the sun, and I was proud of that. I track sleep like a project. I track nutrition like data. I turned my body into an efficiency engine, and I called it discipline, and everyone around me called it discipline too, and so I assumed it was true. I built the reputation, the kind that enters a room before you do, the kind people reference in conversations you're not part of, the kind that feels from the outside like it must feel extraordinary from the inside. It didn't. Here's what I learned, but only much later, after the collapse I didn't see coming because I was too busy building to look up. The wall doesn't protect you from the thing behind you. It just keeps you from turning around. I was 34 years old. I was at the top of everything I had told myself mattered. The work was working. The numbers were moving. The name was climbing. And I sat in a car. I remember this clearly. I remember the specific quality of the light, the way it came through the window at an angle that felt almost accusatory. And I felt absolutely nothing. Not peace, not satisfaction, not even the clean absence of distress that I used to mistake for contentment. Nothing. And the nothing was loud. It was louder than any alarm, louder than any notification, louder than any applause I had chased or received. It was the sound of a man who had won the game he had been playing his entire life and discovered in the winning that he had been playing the wrong game all along. I sat in that car for 40 minutes. I didn't call anyone. I didn't make a note in my phone. I didn't turn it into content. I just sat there, very still, while the nothing roared around me, and I thought, for the first time in years, thought something true. What am I actually doing? Wait, before you scroll, I know you. I know the reflex. I know the way the mind moves when something starts to feel too close, too honest, too much like a mirror. The thumb moves before the thought does. It's a defense mechanism so fast it doesn't even feel like a choice. But you open this. Something in you opened this. And I want you to stay with me for a moment. Not because I have all the answers. I don't. I promise I don't. But because I have something better than answers. I have the specific geography of a particular kind of loneliness that I believe you know. I believe you're living it. I believe some part of you is exhausted in the way that sleep doesn't fix, in the way that achievement doesn't touch, in the way that makes you feel ungrateful when you try to articulate it, because look at everything you have, look at everything you've built. What right do you have to feel empty? That question, that particular cruelty, I know it well, don't deny it. You're carrying something you haven't named. You've been carrying it so long you've forgotten you're carrying it at all. It's become posture. It's become personality. It's become the particular angle of your jaw when someone asks how you're doing and you say busy or good or grinding. All of which are true and none of which are answers. You don't remember the last time you told someone the real thing, not the polished version, not the strategic vulnerability you've learned to deploy in conversations to seem relatable while still maintaining control. The real thing, the 3 a.m. thing, the thing that sits at the bottom of all the productivity, all the ambition, all the relentless forward motion like sediment at the bottom of a river. I didn't either. Her name isn't important. What's important is what she did, and what she did was almost nothing, which was everything. She didn't arrive like a revelation. She didn't arrive like a solution. She arrived the way quiet things arrive, gradually, then all at once. And at first I almost didn't notice her because I was doing what I always did, performing, presenting the version, the assembled, edited, curated version that had been approved by years of positive reinforcement. She wasn't impressed, not in the devastating way, not coldly. She wasn't trying to diminish anything. She just didn't perform back. She didn't do the thing most people do in the presence of someone who performs, which is define their own performance and do that. She just sat there, looking at me. Not through me, not past me, just at me. with this stillness that was somehow more confrontational than any argument I had ever had. She said one evening, not dramatically, she said it like she was mentioning the weather. She said, "You don't have to be impressive right now." And I laughed. Of course I laughed. It was the defensive laugh of a man who has been found out and doesn't yet know what to do with that. The laugh that buys time, the laugh that says caught without saying anything. She didn't laugh back. She just waited. That waiting, God, that waiting. I didn't know what to do with it. I had been conditioned by years of constant input, constant feedback, constant measurement to be deeply uncomfortable with waiting, with pause, with the kind of silence that isn't a problem to be solved, but an invitation to be received. I didn't receive it well at first. I talked into it, I filled it, I intellectualized and analyzed and explained, and what I was really doing was running very fast. While staying completely still, she let me run. She didn't chase. She didn't try to catch me. She just stayed. Here's what I learned about staying. About what it actually means when someone stays. I had been surrounded my entire adult life by people who loved the version, who needed the version to remain consistent because their relationship was with the version, not with me. And I don't blame them for that. I'd built the version so well, had maintained it so diligently that there was no obvious seam, no visible entry point into anything behind it. I'd made the version airtight, efficient, waterproof. I was proud of it. But a version cannot be known. And to live as a version is to live in a very particular kind of solitary confinement. The walls are everywhere, they're just invisible. The lock is on the inside. And you've been told so many times, by results, by rewards, by the simple fact that the version keeps working, that the walls are protection, not prison. She was the first person who made me feel the difference. Not by attacking the walls, not by demanding I take them down, but by standing near them gently over time and letting me notice on my own that I'd been inside for a very long time and the air was getting thin. Look at me for a second. What are you afraid would happen if someone knew? Not the polished version, the real one, the one with the fear in it, the one with the doubt in it, the one with the specific, particular shame of a moment or a pattern or a way you've been that you have never said to another human being out loud. What would actually happen? I'll tell you what I thought would happen. I thought the whole architecture would collapse. I thought that the careful, patient, brick-by-brick construction of a self that was worth respecting, worth taking seriously, worth including, I thought it would come down. And that I would be standing in the rubble and everyone would see what was in the rubble and leave. That was the fear, fully articulated. The fear that drove everything. The fear that wore the costume of ambition, of discipline, of relentless improvement. The fear underneath it all was this: I am not enough without the performance, and if you see that, you'll go, it started early. This is important, I think, not as an excuse. I'm past using childhood as an excuse, but as an explanation, as a map, because you can't reroute a journey until you understand where the wrong turn was. Somewhere in my formation, in those years when we're still soft and still absorbing everything and still deciding, without knowing we're deciding, what love is and how it works and whether we're eligible for it, I learned something deeply wrong. I learned that love was a response to performance, that it arrived after, that it was the reward, not the ground, that it had to be earned, and earning it required becoming something, doing something, proving something that wasn't immediately obvious in the absence of evidence. And the tragedy, the specific tragedy of this particular lesson, is that it works, it produces results, it gets things done. The child who believes love is earned becomes the adult who earns extraordinary things. The strategy is effective. The strategy is devastatingly, systematically effective right up until the moment when you're sitting in a car with everything you built around you and you feel nothing because you never built for feeling. You built for earning, and the thing you were trying to earn, the thing under all of it, was never the achievement. It was always just the arrival of someone who would look at you without the performance and stay anyway. Tell me something, when was the last time you let someone sit with you in the difficulty? Not update them on it, not present it as a managed situation, not narrate it with the framing already applied and the lesson already extracted and the growth already visible so that the vulnerability lands cleanly and impresses rather than exposes. When did you last let someone in before you had it handled? I know the answer for most of you because I know the answer for me, and it was never, or almost never, or so long ago I had forgotten what it felt like. The risk of that, the specific, irreducible risk of being seen in the middle, before the resolution, with the outcome unknown and the wound still open and no guarantee that the person in front of you is safe. That risk. I had decided, at some point so early I couldn't locate the decision, that it was unacceptable, that the potential loss was too large. And so I had built the system of control, the management of perception, the careful curation of which truths were shared when, with what framing, to what effect. Exhausting. It is exhausting in a way that is almost impossible to communicate to someone who hasn't done it. Not physically, psychologically. The constant calculation, the constant monitoring, the constant upkeep of the image while simultaneously trying to actually live, actually work, actually be present in your relationships. You cannot do both. You cannot maintain the wall and also be inside with someone. The energy that goes to the performance is stolen from the presence every single time. She said something else much later that I have thought about almost every day since. We were sitting together on an ordinary evening, not an important evening, not a milestone, just a Tuesday or whatever day it was, with all the unremarkable furniture of an ordinary life around us. And she looked at me and she said, "I think you're afraid to be happy. I think you don't trust it." I started to object, because I had the objection ready, the data, the evidence, the counter-argument, because that was my first language. Argument, analysis, the intellectual response to the emotional observation. She didn't wait for the argument. She said, "Not as a criticism, I'm not criticizing you, I'm just saying what I see." And what she saw was this, that I had been operating my entire adult life from scarcity, from the assumption that good things were temporary and that the appropriate response to their arrival was not presence and gratitude but vigilance, preparation for their departure. Because if you're already braced for the loss can't break you. It doesn't work that way. You don't get to experience the thing fully if you spend the whole time it's present preparing for its absence. The protection becomes the deprivation. You are so busy defending against the loss that you never allow yourself to have the thing in the first place. I had been doing this with everything, with work, yes, with success, yes, but also, and this is the part that required the most honesty to see with her, with the relationship itself. I was present but braced. I was there but guarded. I was loving in the way a man loves when he doesn't fully believe he's allowed to. Here's what the collapse actually looked like. Because I think we need to spend some time here. I think we owe the collapse more than we usually give it. We like to skip this part. We like to move from "it got dark" to "I learned so much" without sitting in the middle where the learning wasn't happening yet, where it was just falling, the middle where the system you built to protect yourself is revealing itself to be the thing that's been suffocating you. The middle where the identity you've worn so long you forgot you put it on is being pried from your skin, and it hurts in a way you didn't expect because you didn't even know you were wearing it. I stopped. I stopped producing at the level I had produced. Not dramatically, not with announcement, I just couldn't sustain the pace. The engine that had been running for 15 years on fear and forward motion started to stutter. And I didn't immediately understand what was happening because I had no framework for it. Everything in my internal vocabulary was about pushing through. Everything I had been told about difficulty was about discipline, about more, about not stopping. Nobody had told me that some collapses are mercy. Nobody had said, sometimes the falling is the thing that saves you. Sometimes the structure you built has to come down because it was never a home. It was always just a demonstration, a monument to the idea that you were worth something. And you can't live in a monument. Monuments are for looking at. Homes are for being in. I didn't have a home. I had the most impressive monument I could design, the rebuilding. And I want to be precise about this because I think we do a disservice to real transformation when we describe it as sudden or dramatic. The rebuilding was slow, unglamorous, often indistinguishable from nothing on any given day. It started with honesty, not the performed honesty of strategic vulnerability, but real honesty, which is much less elegant and much more uncomfortable. Real honesty doesn't land well. Real honesty doesn't have the arc already built in. Real honesty sounds like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know who I am outside of what I produce. I don't know how to be in a relationship without managing it. I'm afraid. I'm very, very afraid. She heard it. She didn't fix it. She didn't offer solutions or silver linings or the particular cruelty of premature consolation. She sat with it. She let it be what it was. She said, okay, we can work with that. Not I'll fix it. Not it's not that bad. Not you're so strong, you'll be fine. We can work with that. 3 words, really, in terms of what mattered. We. That I wasn't alone in it. That there was a we available to me if I could let go enough to step into it. I started doing something I had never done. Small thing. Almost insultingly small given the scale of what I had been building. I started arriving not to events, not to meetings, not to obligations. I started arriving to moments, to the specific texture of a specific morning, to the way light entered a specific room, to the feeling of a conversation not as a task to be completed, but as a thing happening in real time with another human being who was also, in that moment, trying to figure out how to be alive. I started asking questions I actually wanted the answers to. Not the questions you ask to signal interest, the questions you ask when you're actually interested, when you actually want to know, when the person in front of you is for a moment more important than the version of yourself you're trying to protect. I started letting silences exist without filling them. That one took longer. The silence tolerance. Because silence, for a long time, had felt dangerous, had felt like space for assessment, for judgment, for the arrival of some verdict I had always assumed was unfavorable. What I discovered, slowly, was that silence between 2 people who are genuinely present together is not empty. It is the fullest thing. It is the sound of 2 people trusting each other enough to not perform. Here's what I learned about identity, about what happens to identity when you strip the performance away and try to find what's underneath. It's terrifying at first, because there's this moment This genuinely disorienting, genuinely frightening moment where you look for yourself and you can't immediately find anything. You've been the performance for so long that when the performance goes quiet, you feel like you're not there. Like maybe you were only ever the performance. Like maybe there's nothing underneath that moment, that specific vertigo. I want to name it because I think a lot of people have felt it and thought it meant something catastrophic, thought it confirmed the worst suspicion, that they were hollow, that the emptiness was the truth. It isn't what it is, and I needed time and honesty and someone who stayed to understand this. What it is the dissolution of the false self making room for the arrival of the real one. The emptiness is not the destination. The emptiness is the clearing. You have to feel the absence of the thing that wasn't working before you can feel the presence of the thing that was always there but had no room. Presence was always there. Curiosity was always there. Care was always there. The capacity for real connection, real honesty, real love. Not the managed, controlled performance of love, but actual love with the messiness and the uncertainty and the irreducible risk that comes with allowing someone to actually see you. That was always there. It had just been buried under all the bricks I used to build the wall. Wait, before you scroll, I know the part of you that's thinking, that's not me, my situation is different, I have things under control, this is interesting, but it doesn't really apply. I know that voice. I had that voice. That voice is not analysis. That voice is armor. You don't have to take the armor off all at once. You don't have to blow up your whole life and call it transformation. You don't have to announce anything. You don't have to perform the healing any more than you performed the wound. But if there is a part of you, even a small part, even a part that only speaks in the quiet that you've been avoiding, that recognizes something in what I'm saying, if there is something in you that is tired, not sleepy, tired in the deep way, the way that knows the tiredness is not about rest but about pretending, about maintaining, about carrying everything alone because you decided a long time ago that putting it down meant losing something you couldn't afford to lose. If that part exists, and I believe it does for most of the people who found their way here, I want to say something to that part directly. You are not required to have it together. The empire I had been building. Let me tell you something about the empire. It was real. The work was real. The results were real. I'm not saying it was false or worthless or that ambition is the enemy. I'm not here to flatten the complexity of that into a simple moral lesson. Ambition is not the problem. Achievement is not the problem. Productivity is not the problem. The problem was what I had made them mean. The problem was the equation I had built underneath all of it. My value as a human being equals my output. The problem was that I had organized my entire internal life around a transaction, performance in exchange for belonging, and had convinced myself that was just how reality worked, when really it was just how my particular wound worked. My particular wound, dressed up as philosophy, the empire was real, and the empire was hollow. Both things were true simultaneously. What I was building toward, the version of the future where the number would be high enough, where the achievement would be sufficient, where the monument would be impressive enough that I could finally stop and feel that I had earned the right to just exist, that version was never coming. Because it doesn't exist. The threshold doesn't arrive. You can reach every goal you set and still be standing in the same internal place, still feeling the same thing is missing, because the thing that's missing was never something the goals could give you. What you're looking for is not on the other side of the achievement. It never was. Don't deny it. The loneliness. I mean the specific kind. Not the loneliness of being alone. Some of you have people around you constantly. Some of you are never physically alone. I mean the loneliness of being unknown, of being surrounded by people who are in relationship with your version while the real you sits somewhere quiet and unapproachable, watching the version work the room, perform the warmth, execute the connection, that loneliness, the loneliness inside the performance. The loneliness that is most acute, paradoxically, in moments of success, in moments of recognition and applause and congratulation, when the version is getting everything it was designed to get and somehow you, the actual you, feel more invisible than ever. I felt that loneliness for years and never named it, because naming it felt like ingratitude, because how dare I feel lonely when I had so much? How dare I feel unseen when I was getting so much attention? The logic of the wound is always this: your pain is illegitimate, your emptiness is evidence of defect. Your longing for something real is a weakness to be corrected. It isn't. Your longing for something real is the most human thing about you. It is the thing in you that knows, despite all the evidence you've accumulated, that performance is enough, that the version is enough, that you were made for something more honest than this. Look at me for a second. I want to talk about asking for help, because I think this might be the hardest part. Harder than the confession, harder than the honesty, harder than letting someone see the real version. Because asking for help is not just an acknowledgement that you need something. It is a surrender of control. And if you are someone who has organized your life around control, around being the one who has it together, the one who manages, the one who solves, the one who figures it out, asking for help is not just vulnerable. It is identity threatening. It suggests that maybe the empire wasn't as self-sufficient as you said it was. It suggests that maybe the strength wasn't strength, or wasn't only strength, but was also fear. The fear of dependence, the fear of debt, the fear of owing something to someone, of giving them that leverage, of letting them into the part of the story where you didn't have it figured out. I know this because I lived it, because I had built over decades an elaborate internal narrative in which needing help was evidence of inadequacy, and in which the only acceptable version of struggle was one that was already resolved by the time anyone else knew about it. You can already see what this costs. You can already feel it. The isolation inside the capability, the exhaustion of being the most reliable person in every room, the weight of being the one everyone else comes to when they need to borrow strength while never turning in the other direction. It's not nobility. I want to say that clearly because I told myself it was nobility for a long time. I don't want to burden anyone. That's how the story went. The self-sacrificing framing of a man who was simply afraid to be a burden because some part of him deep down believed he would be left if he was. It's not nobility, it's the wound dressed in a cape. She asked me once, this was late, this was after a lot had already been said and a lot had already shifted. She asked me, what would it feel like to not have to be strong for one day? I didn't answer immediately. I held the question, which was itself unusual. I had trained myself to answer quickly and well. Speed was competence, hesitation was exposure, but I held it. And what came up in the holding, quietly, with a quality of exhaustion that surprised me, was relief. It would feel like relief. And under the relief, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Something I had buried so deep under the discipline and the productivity and the forward motion that I had nearly forgotten it existed. I felt grief, not performed grief, not the curated, presentable sadness you deploy when it's appropriate and then put back in its container when it becomes inconvenient. Real grief. For the years of connection I had missed because I was too busy maintaining the wall. For the versions of myself I had suppressed because they didn't serve the performance. For the moments I was physically present and psychologically miles away, calculating the next move while someone I loved was sitting right there in front of me, trying to find me. She held the grief with me. She didn't try to stop it or name it or extract the lesson from it or fast forward to the part where it became useful. She just held it. Do you understand what a gift that is? Can you let yourself understand what a gift that is? The presence of someone who doesn't need you to be okay, who will stay in the not okay with you, who has decided without contract, without conditions, without the guarantee of return to be here. That's not nothing. That's everything. Here's what I learned about foundation. I had been building on the wrong thing for most of my life. I had built on reputation, which is someone else's perception of you and therefore can be destroyed by someone else's changed perception at any moment. I had built on achievement, which is a number, which will always require a higher number to maintain the same internal feeling. I had built on performance, which is exhausting and endless and never complete because the audience always wants more and the performer never gets to stop. I had never built on anything that belonged to me, on anything that was mine regardless of what I produced or proved or presented. On the things that were true about me in the absence of an audience, I'm curious. That's true without an audience. I care about things deeply, specifically without anyone watching the caring. I have moments of genuine wonder at ideas, at people, at the specific miracle of a mind encountering something it doesn't understand yet. Those moments don't require witnesses. I had stopped living in those moments. I had been so busy producing, so busy building toward the version of the future where I would have earned the right to simply exist, that I had been skipping the actual experience of being alive. That's a thing worth naming. That's a thing worth saying out loud in the specific, unbeautified way it actually was. I was so busy building the life that I forgot to live it. The altar. There's an image I keep coming back to. I think about what it means to build an altar to something, the commitment of it, the devotion, the daily practice of showing up to the thing and giving it your best attention. I had an altar. I tended it every day, sometimes before sunrise. It was the altar of the work, the altar of the achievement, the altar of the version. And I gave it everything, genuinely. I was a devout practitioner of the religion of my own potential. And it never loved me back. That's the thing about altars. The thing you build the altar to. It doesn't see you. It doesn't know you're there. It doesn't return the devotion. The work doesn't care about the worker. The achievement doesn't witness the person who achieved it. The reputation doesn't love the man it belongs to. Only people do that. Only specific, present, choosing people. And they can only do it with the version of you that actually shows up. The unedited version, the afraid version, the uncertain version, the version that is visibly carrying something and has stopped pretending it isn't. I had to take down the altar, not the work. I didn't stop working. That's not what this is. I took down the altar. I moved the devotion. I put it somewhere that could receive it. Tell me something. What would you do differently tomorrow if you weren't afraid? Not the grand version, not the quit everything, burn it down, radical life redesign version that the mind reaches for when it's trying to avoid the actual answer. The quiet version, the daily version, the version that doesn't require an announcement. Would you call someone? Would you say the thing you've been holding? Would you actually arrive to a conversation instead of managing it from a strategic distance? Would you let the person who is trying to know you know you? Would you put something down? I put something down. I'm still putting things down. This is not a story with a completed ending. I'm not standing at the summit of the transformation, looking back at the climb with the kind of serene, retrospective wisdom that makes for a clean conclusion. I am still in the middle of learning how to be a person. How to be a person who doesn't need the performance to justify the existence. How to be a person who can sit in an ordinary evening and feel the full weight and gift of it without calculating what it's worth, what it's building toward, how it's serving the larger strategy. Some days I do that well. Some days I slip back into the optimization, into the management, into the version. Some days the old fear gets loud and I respond to it with the old habits, and I don't notice until much later that I was running again. She notices. She doesn't punish it. She has this way of coming close when I'm running, not to stop me, just to be near enough that I feel the contrast. The warmth of someone choosing to be present with me while I'm busy choosing to be elsewhere. And that contrast, the contrast between the cold of the running and the warmth of the presence, that's what turns me back every time. Not discipline, not analysis, not a decision, just warmth. The simplest thing, the oldest thing. Here's what I learned about home. Home is not a place you build after you've earned it. Home is not a destination you arrive at when the achieving is sufficient. Home is not on the other side of the last goal, the final number, the ultimate validation. Home is what you have access to right now if you're willing to stop treating your life as a project and start treating it as an experience. If you're willing to be in the room you're actually in with the people who are actually there, present in the way that only works when you've stopped rehearsing how you'll describe this moment later and started just being in it. The bricks I was carrying, the ones I was building the monument with, I still have them. But I've started to understand what they're for. They're not for height. They're for ground. Every brick, every difficult thing, every piece of experience that I thought I was supposed to use to climb higher, it goes down. It goes into the foundation. It makes something you can stand on instead of something you can point to. A home, not a monument. I'm building a home now. It's smaller than the monument. It's much less impressive from the outside. It doesn't have the dramatic skyline, but it has something the monument never had. Someone inside with me, don't deny it. You are tired of the performance. You are tired of the management. You are tired of being capable and impressive and together and fine. You are tired of carrying everything alone because somewhere, sometime, some version of the lesson arrived that said alone was safe and known was dangerous and need was weakness. You are tired of the wall, even if it's kept you safe, even if you're not entirely sure what's on the other side, even if the thought of taking it down is the most frightening thought you've had in years. The tiredness is not failure. The tiredness is the body telling you the truth that the mind has been avoiding. The truth is you were not designed for this kind of alone, not the isolation inside the performance, not the solitary confinement of the version, not the exhaustion of maintaining the image while starving the actual self. You were designed, all of us were designed, for something much older and simpler and harder, for the radical vulnerability of being known, for the irreducible risk of allowing someone to be in the room with the real you, not just the presented you. And discovering, not assuming, but actually discovering through the specific evidence of a specific person's response, that the real you doesn't end the story, that the real you is, in fact, where the story begins. Look at me for a second. I'm going to say something directly. Something that is not a motivational maxim. Something that is not designed to feel good or be shareable or land with the satisfying resonance of a well-constructed phrase. You are allowed to need things. You are allowed to not have it figured out. You are allowed to be, right now, in the middle of something difficult with no resolution in sight and no lesson extracted and no growth visible, and still be worth the full presence of another person. You are allowed to ask for help before you've handled it. You are allowed to say, I don't know, in a conversation where you've always been the one who knows. You are allowed to let someone see you in the actual condition you're in, not the edited version, not the managed version, the actual condition, and trust that what comes back might not be what you feared. The fear is old. The fear is a memory of a lesson that may have been true once in the circumstances that taught it, but is not necessarily true now. You are not that child anymore. You are not in that room anymore. The rules that kept you safe in that room, the rules about what to show and what to hide, about what earns love and what forfeits it, those rules may not apply here, in this room, with this person, but you'll never find that out if you keep performing. The collapse was mercy. I want to end there or near there because I think it's the most important thing I've learned and the thing I was most resistant to believing when I was in the middle of it. The collapse was not the enemy. The collapse was the cure, the structure I had built, the elaborate, impressive, genuinely functional structure of a man who had everything under control. It had to come down because it was the thing standing between me and the life I actually wanted. Not the life I thought I wanted, not the life that looked right from the outside, the life that felt like something from the inside, The life where the work was real and the relationships were honest and the presence was actual presence and the love was messy and imperfect and fully felt, not managed from a strategic distance. The emptiness, the nothing I felt in that car 15 years into the project of my own impressiveness, the emptiness was not the verdict. The emptiness was the invitation. Come back to yourself. Come back to the people who are trying to reach you. Come back to the moments you keep skipping over on your way to the future that will fix everything. Come back. I came back slowly, imperfectly, still coming back on the days I forget. And what I found in the coming back was something I had given up on locating, something I had decided must be unavailable to someone like me with the particular wiring I had, with the particular history, the particular wounds. I found that I could be loved, not the version, me, specifically me, with the fear in me and the confusion in me and the years of running in me. Me, present, imperfect, unperforming, loved anyway, stayed with anyway. Here's the final thing. If you are someone who has been carrying everything alone, and I believe you are, I believe that's who found their way here. I don't think that's an accident. I want to say this to you directly without armor. The alone is not required. I know it feels required. I know the logic of it is so deep, so old, so thoroughly woven into the way you understand how the world works that it barely registers as a choice anymore. It feels like reality. It feels like physics, like just the way things are for someone like you. It isn't. It is a decision made a long time ago under circumstances that made it the only sensible decision available. It was survival. It was good strategy then. It kept something intact in you that needed to stay intact, but you're not in those circumstances anymore. And the strategy that saved you then is costing you now. And you know it. You know it in the tiredness I described. You know it in the 3 a.m. quiet. You know it in the loneliness inside the performance. You don't have to take down the whole wall today. You don't have to confess everything to everyone. You don't have to blow up your life in the name of authenticity. This is not about dramatic gesture. It's about one conversation, one honest answer to one real question, one moment where you let someone be close enough to see you before you've edited yourself into something presentable. Just once. Start there. See what happens. You might discover, I hope you discover, that the thing you've been protecting yourself against has already arrived. Not the catastrophe, not the abandonment, the other thing, the thing on the other side of the risk, connection, presence, the specific irreplaceable warmth of being known and stayed with. It's there. I promise you it's there. But you have to put something down to receive it. I built an empire. And then I built something better. I built a place to be inside.